There was a task that David wanted to perform above all else after ascending to the throne following his long years as a fugitive. It was the task of bringing the Ark of God, which had been at the house of Abinadab, into the city of David. It is truly remarkable that the very first thing David thought of and desired to do upon becoming king was to bring back the Ark of the Covenant. I believe this is a highly symbolic act that shows what kind of person David was, what he valued most, and how he regarded God. What kind of person was David? David was a man who lived a God-centered life. Because he was a man who trusted God entirely, listened to His word, and was sensitive to God's will, striving to live according to it, the first thing he wanted to do as king was to bring the Ark of God.
As we examine this story of David, we can always think of one person in contrast. Who comes to mind? We can think of King Saul. How was King Saul? We realize anew that during his entire reign, King Saul never once gave thought to the Ark of God. It was only when David became king that he considered where the Ark was, at the house of Abinadab, and sought to bring it back. This is a truly marvelous thing. King Saul had no interest in it. Saul sought God whenever there was a crisis, but it was only for that moment.
Saul prostrated himself and sought God before battles, just to escape a crisis when he needed Him. But how was David? The act of bringing the Ark vividly shows that David was a person who thought God centrally, constantly agonizing over what God wanted to say to him and what God's will was. What kind of person was David? He established a plan to bring the Ark of the Covenant. Back when David defeated Goliath, it was no accident that he was able to gain victory by relying on God in that situation. Because he always lived a God-centered life, he was able to rely on God even in those circumstances. What was the reason he could live boldly without despairing even when he was fleeing from King Saul?
I believe it was because he always lived a God-centered life. Because he had the faith that the Lord is my shepherd. Even in difficult and arduous situations, David had the strength to boldly endure even moments that felt like the valley of the shadow of death. Even after becoming king, he did not become proud and live as he pleased. Rather, the first thing he sought after becoming king was to bring the Ark of God and live a God-centered life. David sought to bring the Ark, but where is this Ark now? It is placed in the house of a man named Abinadab. Why did it end up there? It was because of a sorrowful incident during the time of Eli the priest, where the Ark had been captured.
During the time of Eli, while the Israelites were at war with the Philistines, they thought it would be good to obtain God's help, so they took the Ark of the Covenant to the battlefield. They thought they might gain victory if the Ark was present, but the Ark of the Covenant was of no help at all. This was because God was not with them. In the past, when the Ark was carried, the Jordan River parted, and when it was carried, the walls of Jericho collapsed, exerting enormous power. However, on the battlefield against the Philistines, it exerted no power at all. This was because the power did not reside in the Ark itself, but was a marvelous work that happened when God was with the people of Israel. The Ark itself possessed no inherent power.
Eventually, the Israelites lost the Ark of God to the Philistines. The Philistines threw a feast thinking they had won, but they had not actually won. Rather, they faced disasters, such as the idol of Dagon collapsing before the Ark. When they sought to send the Ark back to the land of Judah, it eventually came to be housed in the home of Abinadab, an account recorded in 1 Samuel. David now went to bring that Ark of God back to the city of David. Since it was coming, David was so joyful and happy that he did his best to bring it with the utmost sincerity. But how was it brought? 2 Samuel 6:3 records it this way: "And they carried the Ark of God on a new cart, and brought it out of the house of Abinadab, which was on the hill." and Uzzah and Ahio, the sons of Abinadab, were driving the new cart.
How did they bring the Ark of God? They made a brand new cart, loaded the Ark onto it, and brought it, with Abinadab's sons, Uzzah and Ahio, leading the way. They used what they thought was the best method. However, a problem occurred on the way. As they were coming along, the oxen were startled by something and began to jump, and eventually a situation arose where the Ark was about to fall from the cart. Perhaps seeing an urgent situation where the Ark might fall and be shattered, Uzzah, who held the responsibility of escorting it, reached out his hand in haste to protect the Ark. But an incident occurred where he died instantly on the spot. This situation is described in 2 Samuel 6:6.
And when they came to the threshing floor of Nacon, Uzzah put out his hand to the ark of God and took hold of it, for the oxen stumbled. And the anger of the Lord was kindled against Uzzah, and God struck him down there because of his error, and he died there beside the ark of God. And David was angry because the Lord had broken out against Uzzah. And that place is called Perez Uzzah to this day. If we were to imagine the scene, we might speculate that as the ark was falling, Uzzah reached out to protect it and was perhaps crushed by the ark, dying instantly. The size of this ark of God is thought to have been similar to a coffin used for carrying a body.
While not as long as a coffin, it was about 120 siksim long, 60 siksim wide, and 60 siksim high. Since it was made of wood, it might not have been extremely heavy, but because it was overlaid with gold and had cherubim angels made of gold on top, scholars estimate the weight to be anywhere from 70 kg to as much as 200 kilograms. Thus, it is possible that as Uzzah tried to stop the heavy ark from falling, he was crushed by it and died, and 2 Samuel explains this by saying, God struck Uzzah, and he died there. Regardless, a disaster occurred during the process of transporting the ark. When such an event happened where a person died, David stopped right there.
The plan to bring the ark was halted, and the story tells us that the ark remained at the house of Obed-Edom. What on earth was the problem? What do you think was the reason for this terrible incident? Many people, while meditating on and researching the Bible, conclude that it was likely because they did not follow the method prescribed by God. According to God's word, the ark was not to be transported haphazardly. The Bible clearly records that the Levites were to carry the ark on their shoulders. Many analyze that the error was violating the regulations God had set and not following the method prescribed in the scriptures, but rather doing what was convenient for them by placing it on a cart.